The wind had been howling since before dawn, kicking up dust and grit that stung the eyes and made a man's thoughts scatter like loose straw. I was riding the south fence line, reins wrapped twice around my gloved hand, trying to get a look at the wire before the next gust brought the whole thing down. That's when I saw her. At first, I thought it was a carcass, something half-eaten, caught up in the barbed strands. The wind played tricks like that. But as I got closer, my horse snorted and shifted, and I saw the truth clear as a rifle barrel. It was a girl, tied to the fence like livestock. Her wrists had been bound in rawhide and pressed so tight against the barbed wire that it cut her skin. Blood already dried in crusted streaks down her arms. She was slumped, barefoot, her dress torn and mud-streaked. Long, dark hair hung in knotted clumps across her face. She looked like she hadn't eaten in days. Her eyes flicked open just once. When I dismounted, "Please," she whispered, "don't put me back." Her voice was cracked and dry like old paper. I didn't say anything right away, just took out my knife and started cutting the bindings loose. She winced when the rawhide peeled away from the scabs. I worked careful. So you learn to do that with animals and with people too, when they're this broken. When she slumped forward, I caught her before she hit the ground. Her whole body weighed no more than a feed sack. Every rib was visible. A few bruises along her jaw, one yellowing around her temple. No shoes. Just blistered feet and broken toenails. "He said I weren't worth feeding anymore," she murmured. Barely conscious, that's all I got from her. Back at the ranch, I didn't bother with questions. Just ran warm water in the basin and started cleaning the blood from her arms. She flinched when I touched her, even though I was gentle. Eyes darted toward the door like she was waiting for someone worse to come in behind me. "Name?" I asked. She hesitated. "Clara," she said finally, not looking at me. I didn't press more. I set her up in the spare room, Maggie's old sewing room. The bed hadn't been slept in for years, but the sheets were clean. I left her a jar of water and half a loaf of cornbread. She didn't touch either that first hour. Just sat there, curled on her side, arms wrapped around her knees like she'd disappear if she let go. The dog, an old cattle mutt named Rufus, lay down by her door. He doesn't trust easy, but he didn't bark at her. Just watched. That told me something. That night, the storm really came in. Thunder cracked over the roof like gunfire. I sat at the table nursing coffee, watching the front window. I could hear her crying in the back room. Quiet, the kind of crying a girl learns to do when she's not allowed to make noise. I didn't go in, didn't know how. But I left another blanket at her door. By morning, the wind had died down. She was asleep when I checked in, curled up like a field mouse under the quilt. I left her be. When she finally emerged later, it was to stare at the fire in the hearth like she'd never seen warmth before. She held the mug of coffee I gave her like it might burn her, not from heat but from kindness. People flinch at that sometimes when they've gone too long without it. "You got any people?" I asked. She shook her head. "Ain't nobody. Lookin'." I nodded once. That was enough. I didn't ask more. She didn't offer. She didn't talk much that day, but she helped feed the chickens and watched while I patched the side fence. She didn't speak unless I spoke first. And even then just nods, quiet answers. But she watched everything. The way I handled the animals, how I moved slow, never too close. It's like she expected to be hit. Every time I reached for something near her, her shoulders jerked up. Later that evening, I found her standing in the hallway staring at a photo on the wall, me and Maggie on our wedding day. My wife had that kind of smile that lit a man's whole life. She died 10 winters ago. Fever took her before our first baby ever saw daylight. "She's pretty," Clara said softly, not turning. I just nodded. The wind picked up again outside, rattling the windows like bones. She stepped back from the frame like it was sacred. Sometimes I think there are folks the world gives up on too early. Clara looked like someone life had tried to bury, but forgot she was still breathing. I didn't know what I was going to do with her. Couldn't pretend to be her father, and God knows I wasn't much for caretaking. But something in my gut told me, you don't find a girl like that and send her back to whatever hell she came from. Not if you want to sleep at night. Clara didn't talk much, but she listened. That was plain. By the second week, she'd started eating proper. Real bites, not just picking at the crust of bread like she expected it to vanish. Her color came back slow. Bruises faded. The cuts on her wrists scabbed and shrank. She still kept her sleeves pulled down, even in the heat, but I didn't say a word about it. Some mornings I'd find her brushing down the horses before I got to the barn. She moved real gentle, like she knew not to spook them, same as how she kept her distance from me. One hand always trailing the horse's side like she was asking permission with every touch. "You done that before?" I asked once. She shrugged. Mama had a mule. That was the most she'd said in 3 days. She still wouldn't meet my eyes, not directly. I'd talk to her and she'd answer with her chin tipped down, her eyes set to the dirt or the stove or the dog lying beside the fire. I didn't push. Sometimes, the best way to let someone heal is to quit looking at the wound. I caught her standing out by the fence one afternoon real still, staring off into the hills. That same patch of wire where I found her. Wind lifted her hair. Her arms were crossed tight like she was holding herself together with string. "You ever go back there in your head?" she asked without turning. "Sometimes," I said. "But I don't stay long." She nodded. "He blamed me, for Mama dying. Said I took too long coming out of her. That's why she bled." She said it flat. No tears. Like someone telling you which field went fallow that year. "After she passed," Clara went on, "he'd just stop looking at me. Like I didn't even belong to him no more." I stayed silent. The wind answered for me. Then one day, he said there was a man in town would pay good for a girl like me. I said no. She looked down at her hands. Fingernails still chipped, skin raw in places. That's when he tied me to the fence. Said if I weren't going to make him money, I could feed the buzzards. She didn't say another word the rest of the day. Later that week, she broke a plate. It slipped while she was drying dishes, and the crash startled us both. She froze, eyes wide, shoulders bunched like she expected a blow. I saw her lips move, whispering something over and over. A prayer, maybe. Or just plain old panic. I crouched beside her real slow. Picked up the biggest shard and said, "Well, it's a good thing I ain't low on glue." Her eyes flicked to mine for the first time in days. I set the piece down and said, "Ain't nothing that can't be mended." She didn't smile, but her hands stopped shaking. A storm rolled in that night, hard and fast. Thunder like a cannon and wind that made the shutters groan. I was sitting by the fire with Rufus when I heard the soft creak of the floorboards behind me. Clara stood in the doorway to the parlor, barefoot, hair damp from washing, one of Maggie's old nightgowns hanging off her like a curtain. "Couldn't sleep?" I asked. She nodded, sat down on the hearth without asking. Her shoulders trembled with each boom of thunder. The firelight danced on her face, not with warmth but the memory of something too close. She curled her knees into her chest. I didn't ask what she was remembering. You don't ask about ghosts folks ain't ready to bury. I just sat beside her, not close enough to touch. Just near enough to say she wasn't alone. "You're safe now," I told her. She looked at me. Not down, not past me. At me. Eyes rimmed red, lips pressed shut like the words inside hurt too much to speak. Then she nodded, tucked her face into her arms, and cried herself to sleep beside the fire. Come morning, she hadn't moved. I draped an old quilt over her and went out to feed the chickens. A few days later, I caught her calling Rufus by a different name. "Maggie," she said softly, holding out a biscuit. "Here, girl." Rufus came right to her. I waited for her to correct herself. She didn't. I waited to say something. I didn't. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe not. Either way, I let it be. That night, as I shut down the lanterns and listened to the wind rustle the dry grass outside, I realized something strange had started to grow in the silence between us. Trust, not fast, not full, but enough, and for two people who'd both been left behind by someone once. That was no small thing. It was market day and I'd only gone into town to pick up salt, flour, and kerosene. Same things I always bought. Nothing had changed in years. until I stepped into the general store and saw him. He stood near the pickle barrel, talking low, to Amos, the storekeep. Black coat too clean for a cattleman. Mustache sharp, boots polished. The kind of man who doesn't do work with his hands, just with papers and pistols. He turned when he saw me. Smiled, but not the friendly kind. "You, the one runs the Sutton place?" he asked, slow and casual, like it wasn't a loaded question. I didn't answer, just narrowed my eyes and waited. "I hear you might have come across a stray girl," he said. "Name of Clara, brunette, 16, pretty little thing." He drew a folded poster from his coat and slapped it on the counter. A handbill, not an official warrant, just something printed on cheap paper. Big black letters. Reward. Property missing. Return for payment. Property. That word near broke something in my chest. "I ain't harboring nothing," I said. "And if you're looking to claim people like cattle, I suggest you ride out before you find trouble." He chuckled. "I got lawful cause. Man paid a lot for her. Girl ran off before the debt was cleared. Contract says she's his until it's satisfied." I looked him dead in the eyes. "She ain't yours," I said. "And she damn sure ain't his." His smile dropped. "You're making a mistake, old man." I leaned in close. Made worse. Then I turned and walked out. The sky was already bruised with clouds by the time I rode home. Storms had a way of knowing when men like that came around, like the land itself bristled at their presence. When I got to the porch, Clara was hanging laundry. She saw my face and froze. "What happened?" I handed her the sack of flour, said, "Nothing." But she saw it, in the tightness of my jaw, in the way I scanned the hills behind us. "Someone came for me, didn't they?" I didn't lie. "Yeah." She dropped the flour. "No. No. No," she whispered. "He sent someone. He said he would. Said I was still his, even if I ran." She backed against the wall, arms wrapped around herself. I could see her breathing fast, her whole body turning into a knot. "I can leave," she said quickly. "I can run. I'll go tonight. You don't have to." "Clara." She stopped. I reached for the door and spoke low. "You ain't going nowhere, but he'll kill you." I looked her square. "Then he'll have to try." That night I checked the rifle, oiled the hinges, and set a second lantern by the back door, locked the windows, laid the shotgun by the chair like I used to during the war years. She watched me, silent at first. Then finally, "Why would you care what happens to me?" I paused, looked up. "'Cause somebody should have cared sooner," I said. "And now it's my turn." She didn't say anything back, but something in her shoulders loosened, just a little. The wind picked up near midnight. Rain came not long after, soft at first, then harder, like the sky itself was pushing back at the world. I sat in the parlor with the shotgun across my lap. Rufus lay by the door, ears twitching. Clara was curled on the rug near the hearth, pretending to sleep, but I knew better. Then, a sound, footsteps, muffled in mud but real, coming around the porch. I stood slow. Clara's eyes flew open. "Stay back," I said. "No matter what happens, you don't open that door." She didn't argue. The knock came like thunder. 3 heavy raps. "You're harboring my property," a voice called, "and I aim to collect." I opened the door slow, just enough to see him on the step, wet from the storm, hand on his belt, near his holster, but not drawn yet. "She ain't yours," I said again, "and you ain't taking her. You got no right to decide that. Neither do you." He shifted, just a bit, and that was enough. I raised the shotgun and cocked it. The sound cracked through the rain like a warning bell. "You take one more step, I'll leave you in the mud where the coyotes can sort you out." He paused, looked me up and down, then looked past me, toward the dim light inside. "You'll regret this, Sutton. Not near as much as I'd regret letting her go with you." He turned, mounting up without another word. His horse's hooves splashed mud across the yard as he disappeared into the dark. I shut the door, bolted it. Clara was still sitting there, frozen. "Is he gone?" she whispered. "For now." I walked over, sat beside her on the rug. She stared into the fire, blinking tears that didn't fall. Then, without looking at me, she said, "Thank you." And after a long, quiet moment, I answered the only way I knew how. "You're safe now, Clara. Long as I'm breathing, you're safe." I should have known he'd come back. Men like him don't like losing, and they sure as hell don't like being told no by someone they think they can buy or break. It was near sundown, sky bruised purple, when Rufus started growling. Not the curious kind, the kind that says trouble's already here. I stepped out onto the porch, shotgun slung in one arm. The wind had stilled, too still. No birds. No sound but hooves in the dust. He didn't come to the house this time. I heard a gate creak. The barn. Clara had gone to check on the mare. She liked the quiet there. Said the horses didn't ask questions. I took off fast across the yard, boots thudding heavy through dirt. My heart felt like a hammer in my chest. The barn doors were cracked open. A faint silhouette shifted inside. Tall, moving slow like a snake waiting to strike. I didn't wait. "Clara!" I shouted. I saw her then, cornered near the back, stall, wide-eyed, a pitchfork trembling in her hands. The bounty hunter turned, gun drawn. "She's coming with me," he barked. "Step aside. I ain't letting you take her. You don't get to choose," he shouted, raising his gun. The shot rang out sharp. Not mine. His pain bloomed hot through my shoulder like fire-licking bone. I dropped to one knee, blood already soaking my sleeve. "Eli!" Clara screamed, but I was still breathing, still able to lift my head. The man advanced toward her, his gun raised now, aimed square at a terrified child, and then I saw her face change. Something inside her cracked, but not like glass, like a shell. She dropped the pitchfork, grabbed my shotgun from where it lay near the door. Her hands shook, but she didn't drop it. "You take one more step," she screamed, "and I'll shoot." He hesitated, just long enough for her to cock it. "I ain't nobody's property." The shot went wide, shattered a beam above his head, but it was enough. The bastard flinched, staggered back, eyes wide for the first time. Blood now spilled, from a graze at his thigh. Not from the shot, but where I must have clipped him before I fell. He turned, muttered something foul, and ran limping out into the night, his horse already spooked. Clara stood there frozen, rifle trembling in her, hands chest heaving. I managed to sit up, teeth clenched hard from the pain. She dropped to my side. "Eli, God, Eli, what do I do?" "Needle and whiskey," I muttered, "in the cellar box." Later, back inside, I sat shirtless by the hearth while she stitched the wound. Her hands weren't steady, but they were careful. "You ever sewed a man's arm before?" I asked, through clenched teeth. "No," she said, "but I patched a dog once. He didn't die." I grunted. "Promisin'." She paused, thread hanging between her fingers. Then, without looking up, she whispered, "You didn't just save me." I turned my head. "You let me be me," she said. "Like I was worth something. I never had that before. Not even from my mama." I couldn't speak, not right away. So I just sat there, while a 16-year-old girl with a backbone full of lightning and sorrow sewed my flesh shut with hands steadier than most men I'd fought beside in the war. Next day, I rode into town, shoulder bandaged under my coat, just to speak to Sheriff Bramley. Told him everything. When I mentioned the bounty hunter's name, Bramley looked up sharp. "God Almighty," he said. "That man's wanted in 2 territories. Fraud, assault, illegal trade, and indenture contracts. You're lucky you didn't kill him." "I didn't come here for luck," I said. "I came to make it clear. If anybody else comes looking for that girl, they'll find me first." Bramley nodded. "Understood." Weeks passed. The wound healed mostly. My arm's not what it used to be, but it still lifts hay and shoots straight. Clara took over most of the chores without asking. She fixed the stall door, learned to saddle the horses without a word. She even handled Rufus's bad paw after he stepped on a nail. One morning I found her painting something on a plank of wood outside the barn. I didn't look until she finished. Sutton and Daughter Ranch, the letters weren't perfect, but they were, sure. She stood back, eyes squinting, one hand on her hip. "Too much?" she asked. I stared at the sign a long moment. My throat felt thick. "No," I said. "It's just right." She came to me like a stray in the wind. Starved, scared, and more ghost than girl, and somehow by saving her, she saved me right back.